Hi everyone, and welcome back. So, today we are diving into one of the most fascinating questions about language, which is how the words we speak actually shape what we see, what we feel, and even what we believe we know about the world. So, when we often think of language as something we use to describe reality, what okay. So, we often think of language as something we use to describe reality. But what if languages is actually the tool that builds that reality for us? By the end of this lesson, you will see that different languages do not just sound different, they can make people think, notice, and experience life differently. So, before we jump in, here's what we are focusing on today. Our goal is to explore how language shapes the way we see the world, how the words we use influence what we notice, and how we can organize ideas and even how we feel. And by the end of this by the end of the day, you will be able to explain and give examples like color, direction, or emotion to show how language can actually shape human thought and perception. So, all right, imagine this for a second. You wake up in the morning, you suddenly can't see any words, no talking, no writing, no texting. So, could you still think clearly? What would your thoughts even sound like? Would they just like they will be quiet or maybe more like pictures? So, that's what we are exploring today. How much of our thinking actually depends on language? Maybe words it's not just do not just help us express what we see. Maybe they decide what we see first. Okay, so here's a fun one. Did you know that some ancient languages do not even have a word for blue? Well, that means when people in those cultures looked at the sky, they probably didn't do not see the blue the way we do. Maybe they saw it as gray or just another shade of green, and that's the key idea here. Color is not only about our eyes; it's also about our language. The words we have or we don't have literally shape what how we see the world. So here is the big idea that ties everything together. So it's called linguistic relati- rela- relativity, or sometimes the Spare Whorf hypothesis. All right. So this is something you learned in week 11. So basically, it means that the language we speak can shape how we see and understand the world, not by limiting us, but by focusing our attention on certain things. For example, different languages train the brain to notice different details, what's important, what stand out, and what matters. And there are two ways to look at it. One says that language controls how we think, and this is called determinism. The other one says language influences how we think. That's relativity, the more accepted one. So if your language doesn't have the word, for example, let's say privacy, can you still feel it? Probably like yes, but maybe you would think about it differently. And here is one of my favorite examples of how language can shape perception. So in English, we can just say blue, one word for shade. The from sky blue, navy, like from sky blue to navy. But in Russian, it's totally different. They actually have two separate words. They have the word golboy for light blue and sini for dark blue. So, what happens? Studies found that Russian speakers can tell the difference between shades of a blue faster than English speakers because their language makes that distinction part of how we see. It's like their eyes are trained by their words. Interesting, right? And that doesn't only happen with color. Other cultures divide the world around them in in completely different ways too. So um, we have a study by Winner, 2007. Um, this difference is not just a fun language fact, something that researchers actually tested. So in this study, Russian speakers were faster at telling apart shades of blue that crossed their language boundary between the globary and the sensi. So, English speakers, on the other hand, didn't show much difference. The takeaways from all of that? Well, language doesn't just label colors, it shapes how we see them. Even our eyes seem to follow the boundaries our words create. So that is not just for English or Russian. It's every language has its own way of dividing up colors. For example, Nambia, the Hemba people use the same word for green and blue, but they have many different words for the shade of green. That, like, they are amazing at spotting tiny differences in green, but not so much between blue and green. And we have the ancient Greek. There wasn't even a word for blue, so Homer called the sea wine dark. That shows how color categories actually evolve with culture. And in Korean, for example, as well, there are completely different words for yellow green and dark green, which shows how some languages highlight really fine visual details. And finally, in Japanese, the word aru means both blue and green. That's why traffic lights are still called blue, even though they look green. So, language doesn't just name colors, it decide which ones matter the most. All right. Also, there's this one is really cool. All right. So there is a community in Australia called the Cook Thairo, and their language doesn't use the words like left or right at all. Interesting, right? So instead, they use compass directions like north, south, east, west for everything. So they would say something like move your northeast hand instead of move your left hand. What's wild is that they always know where they are, like even indoors or in total darkness. Their brain are trained to stay oriented all the time. So just because their language constantly remind them of direction. So again, language is not just about, it's not just for communication. It's literally builds how we move and think in space, which is really interesting. So now let's move to something let's move from color space to something more personal, the family. And this is very, really interesting. The way we name family members actually shows our culture cares about. So, for example, in English, there's just one word for uncle, right? Simple, that's it. One word for both sides of the family. But in Arabic, and this is where it gets interesting for me, we don't, oh, I'm saying we because I'm Arabic speaker, so we don't do that. We make a clear difference between khal for your mother's brother and for your brother's, for your father's brother. And honestly, as an Arabic speaker, that feels natural to me, because our culture, those two rules aren't the same. They came from with different relationships, different kind of respect. And there is also the Chinese. They does the similar thing. They separate based on lineage and duty, while in Hawaiian, it's about generations. So everyone your parents' age might be an aunt or an uncle. So it really shows how we how deeply language and culture are connected. What we call people reflects what we value about them. And also we have the same thing, like similar to Chinese, by the way. We use if someone like your mom or dad age, we use the word aunt or uncle in Arabic as well. So all right, so the next one, actually one of my favorite studies, it's called the bridge study. So, researcher looked at how people describe a bridge in different languages. This is very important, okay? So, in Spanish, the word bridge is masculine. So, Spanish speakers often describe it as strong and dangerous. But in German, it's a feminine, and speakers describe it as beautiful or elegant. Same bridge, same pictures, but completely different feelings. So even grammar, something we don't consciously think about, can shape how we feel about the world around us. All right. So now this is the one fascinating, and okay, it doesn't matter. The transition. Okay. In English, we talk about time like it's a path we are walking on. We say things like looking forward for the weekend or falling behind schedule. So, for English speakers, that time feels horizontal. It moves from left to right like a line. But in Mandarin Chinese, people describe time as vertical. They will say things like a month for last month and down month for next month. And here's the cool part: when researchers showed the Mandarin speakers' timeline, they actually reacted faster when the time went up and down instead of left or right. So again, the way we the way our language talks about time shapes how we imagine it, whether we picture it stretching forward or raising or falling, which is something really fascinating. So, now this part really shows how language is not just about logic, it's also about emotions. All right. So, different cultures actually feel through words in completely different words. For example, okay, so Japanese, there's a beautiful word. It means something like nostalgia, but softer. It's the warmth you feel when you remember a good memory that's gone. And in Arabic, we have so many expressions like that connect with the owner and the body. That's because like these two things are like they mean something in the society. So for example, think about Wajh al-Karim. Wajh al-Karim literally means the face of generosity. It's not just about being kind, it's also about the whole presence showing respect. All right? And we have Rafat al-Ras, the raise of the head. So it's pride, dignity, and the kind of emotion that make you stand tall. And one of my favorites in Arabic as well, خفت عليك. خفت عليك means I afraid for you. So in English, people may say something like I was worried, but in Arabic, it's full with love and care. So this word holds more than I just was worried. It's full with love and care. So words do not only describe emotions, they shape how we live them. They connect feeling, body, and culture all together, which is something cool, right? All right, so now let's talk about the metaphors. Metaphors, so because they are like everywhere, not just in the poetry. So when we say things like high status or low class, we are not just describing people, we are mapping space in auto power, all right? So if I'm saying like a bright idea, we are connecting light and intelligence. Or sometimes you say cold heart. That's not about temperature, it's about emotion, right? So we use these metaphors automatically. Um, they shape how we think, and even when we don't realize it. But here's the catch. So the English second learners, the English second language learners, these metaphors can be confusing for them. All right, because like they learning, they will be think this is literally mean that. So, in your first language, use completely different image of powers, kindness, or intelligence. English metaphors might sound strange or even illogical. So metaphors are not just beautiful language; they are like a hidden maps that guides your our thinking. All right. So before we finish, so let's bring back to the real life for a second. All right. This is the whole idea is that language shapes the way we think. It's not just theory, we can actually see it everywhere once you start paying attention. So let's, for example, design and branding. Even color words can change how people feel. Think about it. Let's say sky blue feels soft, calm, but if I'm saying like navy blue, it feels like serious, right? So the word itself change the mood. And in AI and translation. So this is why machines still struggle. They can translate words, sure, but they do not get context or emotion or culture. So also we have the language teaching. For us, this is a big one, right? Because even when we teach a language, we are not just teaching a grammar or vocabulary, we are actually giving people a new way to see the world, right? And in intercultural communication, it helps us to avoid misunderstanding or bias because sometimes people mean the same thing, but they say it differently. And even in cognitive science, researchers studied this to figure out how our brains connect words with thought and emotion. So, yes, language is not just something we use, it's something we live inside. Once you start noticing that, you can't really unsee it. All right, so that's for today. I hope you got you thinking a bit more how powerful words they are. They are not just tools for talking; they shape how we see, feel, and even dream. Thank you.